Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
When Shalene booked this week's guest, I was so thrilled. I cannot believe I haven't thought of this idea before. It was so enlightening to talk to Krista about the energy within our homes and how to care for it and the rituals to be really intentional with the energy of your home. And it was so eye-opening and mind-blowing to think of this gentle way of getting rid of clutter in our lives, both inside and out. So I hope you enjoy this conversation and make sure you rate and review wherever you listen.
So Heart Ray's home was born out of this desire, really. I am in love with feng shui. I'm not a consultant, but I just love it for my own personal use in our home. And as I got deeper into feng shui and the energy of the home, and then I also have two daughters who are almost 3 and 1. So I'm at home with them a lot. And so to make our home a place that feels really beautiful for us to be in so very often was important for me. And then also this idea of like clutter clearing, right? And getting rid of stuff that just doesn't serve us as a family and where we're going and our vision. So it was really all born. I got to give my girlies credit for that. It came, from being at home with them and being in these 4 walls and seeing like, okay, what can I do to enhance the energy of our life at home? And like I said, feng shui, clutter clearing. I'm also really, I'm a deep thinker. I'm a little intense, and I really like to dive deep into topics like frequency, consciousness, humanity, and just our evolution. And so that kind of plays a little role in my business as well, and just helping people really understand that we have the power and the potential to create our reality. And when we surround ourselves with beautiful things in our home that remind us of this power and of this potential, we're unstoppable. So
I love that. So I hear you say, there's like this, I love that you like the energy of things, there's meaning behind things. And so what is the meaning? What is the root cause of clutter? What are some things that show up in clutter?
yeah, that's such a great question, because I think that people think of clutter as just like a big pile of stuff
Yeah.
that's really meaningless, and it just is like, people just collect things or whatever.
Mhm.
For me, clutter comes up when people are stuck in their life. They just can't move forward. And so maybe a physical manifestation of that would be, piles of things and just this inability to move through them. Clutter can be overwhelm in someone's life, but it can also it can tell this story of like holding on to the past. Now, the past, whether that's a good past or a challenging past, right? It can just really keep you in those moments of like, maybe a sad situation happened or a loss of a loved one, and you're holding on to their stuff. And so it can keep you in that energy of the event that you went through. But yeah, clutter, overwhelm, feeling stuck, it can really it can manifest many different things, but those are the things I see often. The other thing is too, is just like, I'll say lack of time, which then brings us into almost like a lack mentality, right? So if we're in this, like, I don't have enough time to clean my house. I don't have enough time to put stuff away. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough stuff. And so you kind of just hold it.
Yeah.
And you contract, and that often can show up in people's clutter and the way that they keep their homes.
Yeah, I loved it. In the interview that I watched and listened to before, I just had never thought of it that way. But we're big into this mental body, emotional body, physical body, and spiritual body. And when I was first kind of introduced to that, those 4 bodies, which was kind of just like an inspirational, revelational moment, kind of like. And the thing that, as I sat with each of the bodies, that the physical was the communicator. Like the physical part of us was the communicator. That was what I kind of heard. And it was interesting because I didn't know what that actually meant. So I was kind of talking to some people about what does this mean? But what I realized is it's like really, if we have a thought or if we're having an emotion or really what's happening for us to understand it, it really is a physical sensation. It's a physical sensation in our body. It is physical. But I never thought about it until I listened to the interview with you about, because I'm always about, let's listen to what's going on inside, but I thought outside of us is physical too, and so it's so important, it's so powerful and empowering to look around at your space and there's a physical representation of something and figuring out what that is, you know what I mean? Because like you say, I can hear you saying it depends, it depends on whether to keep it. It depends on whether that pile is appropriate or not. You know what I mean? It's not just about the pile, right? Would you agree about? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes, like I said in the first questions, like I'm a deep thinker. I take things probably, to that one level deeper than the average Joe, but like I see people's clutter and it takes me there. It's like, what are you running from? What are you hiding from? What are you not ready to let go of? What are you afraid of? So yeah, to me, it's a manifestation of the things that people are just really not ready to let go of. Emotionally, energetically. The other thing too, which I love the way that you put it, like in our physical body. And I also believe that, our emotions come out in our physical body. I've experienced it myself. And our environment is that physical essence, but also we live on planet Earth, which is this earthly, grounded, very physical, we're in the 3D, we're in the third dimension. And so with that, of course, our external is mirroring our internal and vice versa, right? So it is very, I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah, that pile is a mirror. And it can be your tool. It can be your tool, right? Because that's the thing is, I think, as I was kind of chatting with my son about how we were going to record today, and I said, it's interesting because literally, if you could pick up something and just feel what's going on when you connect with this thing, there's a lot of information there. There's a lot there. And whether it could be a joyous thing, you know what I mean? And I liked it because I was telling him, I said, so if it is a joyous thing, then let's put that in a place that's special in your home. You talked about that a little bit about placement, having these, I think you called it intentional placement. I loved that word. Tell us a little bit about that part of decluttering or of going through your things.
Yeah, so that to me reflects a little bit more of like the feng shui. So like I said, I'm not a consultant. I'm not, trained to consult people. I use it in my own home, but to me, the intentional placement of items in our home can connect us, it can ground us. Like we just said, it's a reflection. Our homes are often a reflection of what's happening internally. So if you can set an intention, like I'm sitting in our creative space now, and I've got this little altar over here with, a statue and a picture frame and an oracle card. And it's like, I remember the feeling that I had when I placed that there. And there was an intention behind it, right? I'm in this creative space. I want a waterfall of creativity, the abundance to flow. And so I made that connection and I made that intention. And then when I look at that, it brings me back into that mindset. So it can actually be like a visual cue to remind people of their intentions. If you'd like to set your frequency for the day to be, open and expansive, and you place like an oracle card or whatever people feel is sacred to them, everybody's different with that, but it's this visual reminder of the intention. So that's the way that I use it in our home. And that's what I teach my clients too. It's that ability for us to stay in the intention instead of get lost in the day to day, right? When the mind starts to take over, it can bring us back into our hearts.
Right. I love that. So when you're working with a client, do you feel like you're kind of using this intuition when you're with them and it becomes from that direction, or do you kind of go through a process that's the same as everyone, or because it sounds to me like you're kind of have to be in that space and then it kind of like you're kind of feeling the energy of it.
So I primarily work with people online. So I know that sounds interesting because I do have people that I've gone into their homes. But I sometimes hesitate with that because I do know that for my own personal energy, people's homes have energy. And I admire feng shui consultants who can go in and just absorb. I'll tell you a little story here. Another reason why this business got started is because I actually got a job cleaning cabins for a friend of mine. They own a resort. So I started going into these cabins, and I love cleaning, but I live with 2 children and a partner, and my house is never fully clean. So I was so grateful to be able to like leave our house, clean someone else's, and then walk away with it being beautifully clean and perfect, right? So anyway, so I'd be cleaning, and there would be days when I would come home from cleaning and I would be exhausted and I would be drained physically, but also like energetically. Like something happened in the cabin. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it was like this energy, maybe there was something that happened with the couple, or it was a big event, like someone got engaged, and I would feel it. And I would notice myself being very exhausted when I came home. So I quickly realized with that my boundaries, I need to work on that when I go into other people's spaces. So it has been something that I'm doing cautiously. But in regards to what I do offer my clients, is it's very much a vision-based and intention-based process. So I would take someone through, I've got a few different offerings, but like my 5-day offering, for example, is like 5 days. We go through each different step that I have. So it's not just about me going into people's homes and saying, get rid of your stuff. It's too much. It's my version of clutter. It's very much intentional. What is your vision for your life? Where are you feeling stuck in your life? And then the reflection of that in your home. So that it's a little bit deeper than, just clutter clearing people's homes. And so, yeah, I would take them through the process of that. And then by the end, they would have the ability to then go set up their space in a way that felt good in their heart center, but with the tools and with the grounded, intention and vision for their life, their career, whatever it is that they're working on.
I love that. That sounds amazing. And you call yourself centered, which is funny. I have a modality that I'm trained in called heart-centered therapy, actually. So that was like a little pick in my ear. So how do you define that? What does that mean? That heart-centered, coming from a heart-centered space?
Yeah, so funny. I'm really into astrology, and I've got a lot of energy in Leo. So Leo's rules over the heart. So I've always been a heart-centered, to my detriment. I follow my heart. I've gotten hurt. I've done some stupid things, but yeah, I've just always been very like heart wide open, heart on my sleeve. Even before I knew anything about my astrology chart, it was very much how I was. I've been in my family called the sensitive one. And it's because I do have just a really open heart. But heart center to me is leading your life with the heart center. So it's coming from, our logical mind where we have to figure every step out. And there needs to be, evidence in the form, evidence in the 3D world of like this manifestation is coming true, or this is the direction to move in. Of course, I was there when I was younger. It was very much like I needed the physical evidence. And as I started to open up my mind a little bit more and return back to my heart after maybe closing off for a little while of my life. But yeah, it's very much just it's leading life through the heart. It's listening and trusting your heart. I would even say your gut, but gut-centered doesn't sound as nice as heart-centered. But yeah, it's trusting your intuition, right? Which to me is my heart. That's always going to be my lighthouse and where I'm guided to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I totally get your Leo. I have a moon in Pisces. So we're coming up on, there's going to be a moon in Pisces, new moon coming up. So I'm preparing myself.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, very sensitive, very, very open, and very sensing, I would say. It's like,
yeah, totally
it's sensing. So I totally get that. So I wanted to ask you, like, just for people to kind of, because I think we don't think of clutter or of our home. I don't know if people think that as a reflection. I think we kind of just think that's just the way things are, whether, so I just kind of wanted to go through some of the of those four bodies, like what are some mental, what does the clutter say mentally? What are those thoughts that come up? What are those beliefs that show up
Mhm.
in the clutter that you would say?
That's really interesting that you said that. I've listened to many podcasts in my research, I'll say, especially coming from a parenting perspective, where like clutter is very stimulating mentally. Just too
Mhm.
much stuff in general
Yeah.
is very stimulating for the mind. And like I said, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I can see when they go into these rooms or the play area or something that's just too much, they
Mhm.
just freeze. They don't know what to do. Their
Mhm.
brain can't process it. And children are sense beings. They have everything's very sensory, right?
Yeah.
Us adults, we can kind of disconnect a little bit from that.
Mhm.
But even for me, like I said, I'm sensitive and I'm very much aware of my surroundings. And when there's too much going on, it's
Mhm.
hard for me mentally to focus on the task at hand. I very
Mhm.
much want to be clear space so that I can
Mhm.
have a clear mind. So I would say in regards to the mental body, it's very much about it's just an overwhelm, in the mind. And people can get stuck in that loop of
Mhm.
constant overwhelm. Is it the stuff or the thoughts? Is it the stuff
Yeah.
or the thoughts?
Yes. I think looking from that child perspective is so good because the fact of the matter is like you said, we've had to build up some resistance to that. And that resistance is taking up some of our capacity that we could put somewhere
Yes,
else.
very much so.
And so, if we could look at through a little, if we could think about that, about stimulation, I think that's amazing. So
Mhm.
that mental part, yeah, I loved that answer. That was great. What are some of the emotional things that come up for some of your clients?
This is probably the biggest thing, to be honest with you. Like,
Mhm.
of course, the physical body, the physical space, we see it, but the
Right.
emotion is where the depth of the work comes in.
Hmm.
So I'll give you an example, myself. Like, I don't have clutter because I don't personally like clutter and I'm aware of what it's doing to my mind. But
Hmm.
when I just had my baby last January, of course, I had pregnancy clothes, like maternity clothes, and then I had bigger clothes that I was wearing when postpartum, and then it just got to a point where my closet was full of stuff that was I didn't like because I'm not pregnant. I don't need those big giant stretch pants, although they are comfortable, but I don't need them anymore. And like as breastfeeding slowed down, like things just it was time for things to get out of the closet.
Hmm.
I don't like my closet full of stuff where it overwhelms me. But then as I'm packing up my pregnancy stuff to put downstairs, if we ever have another baby, it was like, oh, okay, I'm like want to cry right now because what if this is the last time I wore these giant ugly sweatpants that I loved to wear while I was 9 months pregnant? It's just
Hmm.
like the
Hmm.
emotion flowed through me. And you just have to honor that, right? So
Hmm.
the closet is a tricky spot for people because we do have so much in that physical realm of like the weight, the body image, self-confidence, stuff like that. People can get really tripped up on their clothing and their outer appearance.
Hmm.
Again, with this Leo energy in me, it's very like,
Right.
look at me kind of thing, right? So honoring what shows up. And I think the thing when you are moving through getting rid of stuff or setting up a space, like really feel into how emotionally you respond to what's happening in your home. But when it comes to letting go of things, if there's a story behind it, like this is where people, I think, need to connect to their heart center and where they need to really stay in that heart center, get out of the mind, get out of like the grief and the shame and the story you may be telling yourself about stuff.
Hmm.
Another interesting example is say you're wanting to get rid of stuff, but you spent like a lot of money on it. Say it was like a really
Hmm.
expensive thing, or in your mind it was super expensive, and you are feeling guilty and ashamed you ever even spent that money, guilty you're just going to get rid of this thing that cost so much, it had so much value. The more we stay in that cycle, that mental, emotional cycle where we're like bullying ourselves for what we did, it really keeps us in that low vibration and that shameful, that guilty energy. So that's where we need to move in with an open heart and
Hmm.
come at it from a place of like gentleness and compassion. that was us a year ago, a month ago, 2 years ago, whatever. And now we know better. So we're going to do better and we can move forward. Right. So it's a little bit of a forgiveness that can show up. Like there's a lot to be talked about within the emotional body for sure.
For sure. I know. I just when listening to you and what you do, I just thought that's like a full session. I mean, I do sessions with people and I was like, literally, I mean, they pick up an item, especially if they're in a little bit more of a chaotic environment. I mean, you're going to immediately connect with something. You know, an emotion's going to show up, a thought's going to show up almost immediately. Like that's a quick way to get down to the root of what's going on in your life. I thought she's got this
Totally.
she's got this down. This is a genius way of working. I was like,
Yeah.
because and referring to heart-centered therapy, I mean, what that modality teaches is that we go to this emotion and then we ask the heart, we use that heart space, that heart memory. We ask it, when was the first time I felt this, and we go through and we process some of those things that didn't get processed long ago, or that were picked up and created long ago, things that are causing unease in our life. So I think for people that don't know what's wrong, this would be such a great place to start. I mean, you would get answers so quickly. You might not have a memory, but you'll get it a feeling. You'll get the gist of what's going on in your life a little bit. I think it's genius.
Yeah.
I think it's genius.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
So I know that it's not like you would say that you would advise people to be a minimalist. You said, I know you've said that before, but tell us a little bit about more and less, and let's go into that for a little bit, and what you've learned with your clients about having more or having less.
Yeah. So I think I've lived in both of those lands, to be honest with you. Yeah, probably like my early 20s, I started going more into like the minimalist. I bought my first house. It was small. I lived with someone else, so then I had to deal with their dynamics. But before that, I had everything. I went to school for fashion, marketing, and management. So I very much had a wardrobe stuffed to the nines of like the coolest new clothing, many shoes, hundreds of shoes. I just was like extreme about the outer appearance. I remember my college dorm had a poster like mosaic all over the wall, like top to bottom covered. I mean, if I saw that now, I think my heart would just like explode a little bit. But yeah, so I think I swung really to the a lot of stuff land for a lot of my life. And then it was when I started to notice that like, what I did have in my home, even though it was less, there was this intention behind it, or I really loved it. But it really wasn't until recently, until our second daughter came around. My partner, actually, because I'm self-employed, he took parental leave. So like normally the mom would take, a year to 18 months in Canada for parental leave. And because I was self-employed, I didn't have that option. So he took it. Well, that meant that I was working from home with a baby and a toddler and him, and he was on 50% salary. So we had to be a little bit more mindful about where we spent our money. And with children, diapers are more important than the cute clothes, packing through the closet. So I think I really just changed my perspective a little bit on the amount of stuff that was needed and where we spent our money, especially in regards to our children. So that really flipped things for me. And I started to notice that I don't even use half of this stuff. Like if you can see this little like crystal rack behind me, like I have a million crystals and I love crystals. I adore them. I don't need a million of them. I don't, right? And so it got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna slowly start to clutter clear my own house, my own heart space. And I almost had to like reset my values a little bit. So that's a personal story about the lesson more. But for people who are listening, it's like, what does having less, what does it signify to people? Because there was a point in my life personally where having less was because I didn't think I was worthy of more. So is it that mentality, or is it an intentional, I don't want to overdo it. I want what I want in my home. I want good quality, high quality, or I want, beautiful,
Mhm.
whatever it may be. So it's really a mindset thing, I think.
Mhm.
But I definitely wouldn't call myself a minimalist. I have more than, 5 mugs because
Mhm.
we're at the point in our life, which is beautiful, where we have friends over and we can have dinners with people. And I want to have enough plates and spoons to
Right.
serve people because that's a value of
Right.
ours, right? So
Mhm.
I had a friend come over and she's like, "Whoa, you're a minimalist. You don't have a lot of stuff." It's like, wow, I thought I had a ton of stuff.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's all in the eyes, right? So,
Right. So right. Yeah, I have a story. So a few years ago, my husband has this bucket list that we kind of knew within weeks of being married. I knew that that this was gonna be part of our life. So he wanted to get a motorcycle and wanted to go on a trip, like a long trip. So we planned this motorcycle trip. He ordered all the like lightest tent, the lightest, sleeping bag, all this stuff that we could fit into this motorcycle. It's a big motorcycle, but still. And we were going to stay in a hotel every so often, but we were going to camp. And in fact, we ended up going north, and then we went all across kind of Canada and then came down back into the US. And so about day 2 or 3, we would pull up on our motorcycle, pull out our little tent. It was a 2-man little tent, pop it up, blow up our mattress. I had my iPad that had all the downloaded movies on it, that we wanted to watch. And we had this little stove even that we could do. And about the third night, we're putting up our tent, and I kind of look over, and there's this gigantic RV, which nothing against the RV, but they're the wife's in the back, like, helping them try and
yeah.
took them as much time to park the RV as it did for us to put up our tent and be done, right?
Yeah.
And I just said to my husband, I says, it's wild because we actually have everything that they have. We have a place to sit, a place to sleep, we have warmth, we have food, we have something to watch. Like, we literally have all
Mhm.
the same things. And it was like transformational for both of us. We ended up coming home from the trip, and within months we had sold our big home and had downsized, and we had to get rid of so many things. It was like a quick way. I highly recommend it because it brought up all those feelings. It helped me realize what my values, what are really my
Mhm.
values. Because I think that was a
Yeah.
perfect way of saying it. It's like, it's not about having nothing. It was just about, how do I, because if I went on an RV trip, that would be great too. It's not like I'm
Mhm.
against, but it's just, what is my value at this point? And for us on this little trip, our
Mhm.
value was being outside, getting to places, as many places as we could see. We ended up doing, I think, 3,700 miles on this trip. We saw
Wow.
amazing
Yeah.
things. That was our value at that time. It was to be out and
Mhm.
experience. And so I
Yeah.
I I just, it was transformational again, like I say, to get rid of the things, to feel what it felt like to get rid of the things, to really
Mhm.
analyze, oh, this is hard for me, or this is not
Mhm.
hard at all. And what have I been doing? What
Mhm.
makes me want to keep this? What has made me want to
Mhm.
have more square footage, and just ask myself the question. It was kind of a fascinating exercise. I kind of highly recommend, even if you
Mhm.
don't have to move, just that your physical surroundings can really be that window that you're looking for into your next step, I think.
It's
And
so true.
I think it's
Yeah,
so
it's
true.
so true. And what a beautiful example to really like, have let go a little bit for this trip and saw what it felt like to not have all of the stuff,
Yeah,
and yeah, I
it
mean,
was.
I'm not much of a tenter. I can't really imagine just tenting it. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
might get there. We'll see. But I also don't have an RV, so I live in the middle land of that story. But it's very much like, what a beautiful way to zoom out and, yeah, just like feel into the intention, the values of your life,
Yeah.
what you guys wanted, and how beautiful and freeing it can be to not be weighed down by this stuff, even
Hmm.
energetically, right? Just
Yes.
that heavy
Yeah.
of full rooms and big this and you know but
Yeah.
it comes down to the story and the intention you're telling. Like, you guys weren't having a poor me moment. Oh, we can't afford the RV and I wish we could. And that was not the story that I'm hearing from you. It was very much an empowering experience of, we're choosing this, we love it, and look what it brought us. Like, what a gift.
Yeah. And I think it's easy to let our environments dictate for us instead of that intentional, like being really intentional with what we want this to look like and what we want it to feel like, even more importantly.
Yes.
You know what?
Yeah. And even like, you know, that goes down to the house we buy, the type of house we buy, the type of decor. It's very much dictated by what other people like. If you're buying someone else's house, it's very much what the other person liked, their color palette, their this. If you have an interior decorator or designer come in, it's very much an aesthetic. And I'm all about aesthetic, you know. I don't have one in this house, but I very much can appreciate a beautiful aesthetic and a beautifully decorated home. But is it from your heart, and is it what you want, and does it make you feel good?
Yeah.
You know, those are the questions people have to ask.
Yeah. And getting to know yourself, you know, there's lots of tools that, you know, there's the Enneagram, there's your astrology chart, you know, those are tools to help you kind of understand yourself, and then let yourself be reflected in your home. I think is just a beautiful thing. So where would you say when people, you know, if they're listening to this and they realize they have this aha moment and they realize my house has a lot of clutter and there's something there, you know, what is the first step? What is a first step that someone can take to kind of start to live intentionally with their home? You know, what is a place to start?
So I think maybe if you would have asked me a couple months ago, I would have said like, oh, just start decluttering the easy places in your home. And I think I said this on the other podcast that you listened to. It was like, oh, just start in the bathroom. You won't have to worry about any emotional stuff. And I've slightly changed my mind about that because I kind of want people to feel what's going on in their home and reflect a little bit, right? So like I said, there's this depth to my, I'll say psyche, or the way that I think about things. And I think it's important for people to reflect. So first things first, you may notice this suffocation or this feeling of like too much, or I'm not taking care of my home. And is that a reflection of the way I take care of myself? Like, start asking yourself those questions. If people would like to journal about it, you know, some reflective journaling about what's going on in the environment. Like, you can get really deep, or you can kind of, you know, stay surface level wherever you're at, wherever the person's at, right? But yeah, very much just notice the energy and what's happening as you look into a particular room. Like, I've even said that to people. What do you feel when you walk into this room? Do you feel contracted? Do you feel open? Do you feel relaxed? So tune into that. That will also help a person, I think, lift their consciousness in a way to be able to connect it on to their emotions in that level, on that level. But yeah, the physical part of things is, once you establish the reflective part, and once you establish maybe what room you'd like to take on first, or is I would set an intention. So I would, you know, again, do a little bit of reflecting. And what do you want? So for example, I'm in our creative space. We don't call it our office. I've called it that for a little while. It's like, no, this is our creative space. This is where we do our work and our work, right, from our heart. So, you know, what's the intention of the space? What's the vision that you're working towards, and what feels good in it already? So you can really tune into what's feeling good. You can start off on a positive note. And then what's not really resonating anymore. You can make 2 separate piles of things. You could go right in and just get rid of stuff. Like, it's all very personal when it comes to actually getting rid of or going through the things. But yeah, I would set an intention and then just slowly start to work at it. I was speaking to my cousin over the weekend, and she was like, I'm noticing I really am procrastinating. She wants to get rid of some stuff. They want to downsize. And she's like, I'm noticing this like wall that I'm running into. And she said, one of the podcasts I was listening to recommended to just set a timer for 15 minutes and just go at it for 15 minutes and then let it go. And I can really appreciate that, because sometimes, myself included, we just like dive deep and then are like, oh gosh, what have I done? I'm sitting in a messy room. I'm more overwhelmed than I was before I got here. I'm wearing all my dress up clothes. This is weird, right? Like, it can get funny. So, you know, just taking it taking it step by step. And again, it's just like being so intentional, connecting to the heart and listening in. Like, I have friends who they're like so overwhelmed with their house. They don't even want to open the door to let people in. And it's like, okay, what is going on here? And now I know, because I have that understanding a little bit deeper. It was like, oh, okay, there's some emotional stuff happening. And I just hold space. I'm not going to ever just say, let me come in there and clear your house up for you.
Right.
But yeah, what's your intention? What's your vision for your life? And how can your space help you? I don't think, like you said earlier, I don't think people really realize the impact our environment has. But if you think about it, when people talk about Earth and what's happening in our environment, like everyone's very concerned. And it's like, well, you're also living in an environment that has energy flowing through it nonstop. From a feng shui perspective, there's energy flowing all of the time. Every object has energy. I believe that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, just being reflective, being super intentional, and listening to the heart when you set these spaces up. And just be gentle. I think that's the number one tip. Just be so gentle with yourself. It's okay if you're a procrastinator, maybe reflect on what's going on. If I had more time to chat with my cousin, we would have probably had a therapy session, because it's like, well, what's going on with that procrastination?
Right. But here it is showing up for you, like it's like, so it's quick for you. And to continue on my story, so we have our house for sale, and my realtor brings in this woman that's going to help, get it ready, stage it, and kind of things, and using what needs to happen and all this stuff. And I had to leave. And so when I came home, there was just this pile in this one room that they're like, yeah, just get rid of all of this stuff. And it was just, I was overwhelmed by the emotions that showed up, because it was, I had to sit there and think about what I was feeling. And I worked through, I went through and I had a session about it, because it was, it was a little bit about, I felt like some of my decorating tastes were unacceptable. But it was all hitting me at an emotion, in one big emotion. It really was several emotions. But when I kind of broke down and really went into those feelings, they had a lot to teach me. They had a lot to tell me about how I could, better serve myself, where I was insecure about, where I needed outside influence or respect in order to feel okay. Like I learned so much from that. I guess it was a process of grief, maybe you would say. I feel like there's probably a lot of grief as you are getting rid of your things. Like at the end of the day, that there's some grief that's there. So
yeah, and even the depth of like, someone else telling you, this isn't acceptable, or you got to get rid of this. I've never sold a home before, so I don't know that feeling. I think I would be actually really off put if someone came into our house right now. They'd be like, you guys have a lot of rocks. Like, it's weird, like, why are there rocks on your walls? Right. Like but that's, I think, the thing where people get a little bit lost in the connection and in the relationship between their home and their hearts, is that someone else is telling you what to put on your walls. I'll give you an example. My mom, I love her, but she was told, and she does like leopard print. Okay. She's like a leopard lady, and everybody just buys her leopard. And then this one day I was thinking to myself, a walk in her house is just like leopard. And it's like, do you even like it anymore? You're 60, almost 60 years old. Is this still you anymore? Just tell me, like, I really, and maybe I should just go ask her, but like, is this the story you've been told about who you are? Or is this your heart? And if leopard's your heart, I love it for you. That's great. Good on you. But is it the story that you want to keep telling yourself? And this can go, that's where that depth is, right? So are you living in a small home because someone told you you can't afford a better home? You're always just going to be there's not enough money for this, or you don't deserve, like I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but we bought, before we had children, this used couch. Okay. We were like young and just had an apartment. It didn't matter. It was a nice couch, but it was $500, and we had it for years, and we have pets, and then we had kids. And it was like, this couch just continuously got to be this weight in our living room that I literally would walk by and say, I hate this couch. I do not like this couch anymore. And it was like, why are we keeping this couch? I don't like it. You don't like it. It's falling apart. The cats have scratched it. It's like a reflection of how we feel about our situation. Like, we have enough money to go buy a new couch. We are okay to buy a new couch. And it honestly, we bought this new couch, we bought chairs, we set up our living room. We sit in that living room every day. And it's so beautiful. In feng shui, it's our career and our wisdom and knowledge area. So I've got this like flow in my career. I've got this connection to my higher self and my wisdom and knowledge within. And it just feels like that shift in my mentality about the fact that we can afford a couch. We deserve a beautiful piece of furniture, and it just like things just change. So I know it can feel really surface level, and it can feel really maybe even like materialistic or consumeristic to get in those loops. And I definitely don't recommend that as our go-to. But it's what is the story that you're telling yourself about your stuff? And how can you step into the story of abundance and that you are worthy of being in a beautiful space? It doesn't have to be designer if that's not your style.
Right.
But it can be beautiful, and it can invite that warmth.
I think Oprah has a quote. She says, "Your home should rise up to greet you." I think, and I think if that feels
Beautiful.
uncomfortable, if that feels like you're undeserving of that, and like you say, even if, it's not a matter of how much you can afford, it's a matter of your interpretation of that. It's a matter of, it's a matter of your intention with that more than anything. And the good news is, we can't make you make a lot of money, but man, we can help you, and you could help someone look at a belief and create something that feels empowering, to feel empowering, that they can be in their space and it can, rise up to meet them. I just think that's not
It's
impossible.
beautiful.
That's not impossible. So, okay, so we talked about where someone can start. What about, I was thinking, what can someone do to level up? What's a level up thing that they can do? Let's say that, maybe it's an action to take or whatever. I don't know. You can answer however you think, but where, let's say we've done that first step, what does the level up look like?
So I would say the first level up on the physical, tangible level is to be consistent in actually keeping your house the way that you want it to. So I've got some tips for that, because that is probably the most important thing. Like, I mean, I'll raise my hand for this one. We've all been here. You declutter your home, you get it everything looking good, and then you just start piling stuff up again because it's just your habit, right? So again, it goes into the depth of like, why do you have this habit of not putting stuff back? Let's retrain the brain a little bit here for that. But I would say get consistent in having places in your home that everything belongs. Like, we have a little, electronics basket and everything goes back there. And then it creates habits for you to keep your home the way that you want it. But yeah, I love this question. This is an awesome question. I would say to level up as well is you can start integrating, I'll say home cleaning or home clearing rituals into your life. So this is my fun take on, a combination of feng shui, a combination of, I'm a parent and I have to clean my house and I've got little ones running around. It's a nice little combo of like energetics and practicality. So I'll let you know, we every week on our cleaning rhythm board, we have a home blessing. So I used to call it our feng shui reset, and I would just follow someone else's that they did, and it just wasn't quite hitting my heart space in the right way. It was someone else's, it wasn't mine. So I took a few weeks off, and I noticed there was some shifts in our home. There was some energy that was argumentative, and our daughter was particularly, a toddler. And I thought, okay, we got to get back to these house blessings or home blessings. And that's what one of my friends had called it. I was like, what a beautiful thing. So our home blessing that's done on Mondays is I shake out our front door mat. Like, we have a big sliding glass door and it leads right into our kitchen. So it's quite, an impactful entrance into our home. I shook out the doormat. I sweep up the whole kitchen right by the front door. I clean the windows because they're big picture windows. And while I'm doing these seemingly meaningless tasks, I'm adding meaning to them by, I'm sweeping away last week's energy.
Wow.
I'm welcoming in as I'm wiping the windows. I'm welcoming in clear vision for this week or clear intention for this week. So you can do little things like that are very, you need to vacuum or you need to sweep or and just make them intentional. So it can be your own. Those are the things that I like to do. I also use like smoke, so I'll like cleanse through our home. When things are particularly heavy in our home, which again, because I didn't do our little house blessing for a little while, it was feeling quite heavy. I actually, and this is from Amanda Gibby Peters, she has Simple Shui, Feng Shui. I took a bowl of salt and I put it in the center of our house and I left it for 24 hours and I wrote an intention because I like to just write things out just to like for the salt to like absorb the negativity, making space for, a clean, clear path after this. So I did that. And within 24 hours, like it just felt lighter in my home, in my heart, and again, the reflection of my home and my heart, it's very, but yeah, so like not so hard, right? They're not really big, grandiose ideas. It's very simple things that we can move through weekly, monthly. You can also, if you're into like the moon cycles, you can plan them with the moon cycles. There's just so much that people can do, whatever resonates with them. But I would say just be intentional with the way that you upkeep your house. So, even sweeping, like we have a funny little song that we sing because our daughters are young and they love music and everything's just more fun when it's a song, right? So we're just sweeping and I'm singing the sweep this away song and just like really truly intending to sweep away the old and welcome in the new.
I loved that. I think that is so amazing. I love it. And that's the thing is like the simplest, nobody likes to clean, but when you add that intention, it just changes everything. That is beautiful. I just love it. I just love it. Well, I love it. So, we're talking about the idea of wholeness, and we always like to get everybody's opinion on their understanding or what comes to mind, or how would you define this idea of wholeness?
I love that question. So I had a little bit of time to reflect on it. And the first thing that came to my mind was my training in yoga. So I'm a yoga instructor as well. And when I first started learning about yoga and as I got deeper into my teacher training, it was very much like yoga means union. So it's the union between whatever, right? Your mind and your body, your breath and your body. So I immediately thought about yoga and this ability for us to connect the different energy bodies, right? But wholeness now on a different level to me means like this, it's just like a very heart-centered. I feel really at this stage in my life that I've almost reached wholeness. I just have this wholesome life where like I love it. I've got people who love me. I've got these beautiful children, a partner. It just feels very whole. But in my heart center, I wouldn't say wholeness comes from this, what everybody else is telling me whole is. It's very much a heart-centered approach to the way that you view your life. And yeah, this union between your heart and your mind, your body, and your breath. It's just that connection.
Feel empowered every day with wholeness videos, meditations, downloads, classes, and more by joining the Wholeness Library at thewholenessnetwork.com.